Call a meeting to order for the Willmar City Council for Monday, December 19th. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Osmus.
Here.
Butterfield. O'Brien.
Here.
Osk.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Plowman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Butterfield has an excused absence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our city attorney is watching us online due to road concerns. So he called me about 20 to 5 this afternoon and was having trouble getting out of the metro. So Ms. Valiant has contact with Robert Scott if needed, or if we need to, we'd take a break and get a hold of him. So that's why Robert's not here tonight. So any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, consent, that motion passes. Consent items, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of December 5th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of December 12th, Planning Commission minutes of November 2nd, accounts payable report for November 29th through December 12th, on sale and club on sale 2023 Sunday liquor license renewals, sale of THC products 2023 license renewals, United Way gambling exempt permit, Willmar Hockey Booster Blue Line gambling exempt permit, consider resolution entering into an agreement with Stacy's Nursery for the 2023 tree requirements, Stadium View minor subdivision plat, consideration of Charter Commission members of reappointment, Carla Tinklenberg, Dan Riegstad, and Ruth Tregesser, and new appointment, Kelly Welsh, Jan Dahl, and Joe DeBreiker. New appointments to boards, commissions, Steve Tammond to Park and Recreation Board, reappointments to boards, commissions of Bruce DeBleek to Municipal Utilities Commission, Chloe Quinn to Park and Recreation Board, Joshua Munson to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Michael Kubish to Police Civil Service Commission, Les Heike to EDC Operations Board, Jill Benson to the Human Rights Commission, Dennis Anderson to the HRA Board, and council's information, the building report for November 2022, Charter Commission minutes of June 28th, and Charter Commission minutes of December 5th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent items. Mayor-elect Reese and I met in regards to the appointments and reappointments to the boards and commissions. And so this is being forwarded with his knowledge and with his support to have them move forward so that the boards and commissions can continue functioning. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have a public hearing to consider a resolution ordering the 2023 street and other improvements and approve the preparation of plans and specs. At this time, I'll open the public hearing and call on our consulting engineer, Mr. Jared Vogie with Bolton Mink.
Good evening, Mayor Council. As you indicated, this is the public hearing for the 2023 street and utility improvement projects. I do have a presentation that I'll run through and then certainly be happy to answer any questions that council or the public might have regarding the proposed improvements. This is listing of the project areas. I do have a map coming up here that'll be a lot easier to read, but ultimately identifies the city project numbers and then the limits of those projects. More easily seen on the map on the screens before you. So ultimately, the areas identified in pink on the screen are proposed as reconstruction areas, the blue as mill and overlay or reclaim, the orange as parking lots, red as is trails, and then green identified on the screen over in the 23rd area is maintenance improvements. So ultimately, as you move from the left-hand side of the screen in the upper left, that's what's being referred to as the Gorton Avenue area. In the center of the screen is the 13th Grace and Rice area. Just east of that would be Mary, Augusta, and Irene. Further east of that is the 23rd Street improvement area. And then on the very south, the red is the 19th Avenue Trail improvements that are being contemplated for 23. So project considerations associated with these proposed improvements, existing sanitary sewer in these areas that are proposed for reconstruct consist of clay or concrete pipe, which is susceptible to sags and infiltration. The manholes consist of brick and block with mortar. Today's technology uses precast concrete structures. The water main within the project area, in consultation with Willmar Municipal Utilities, there is some asbestos cement pipe, which is the material that was used at the time that they were installed, along with cast iron pipe. Storm sewer similar to sanitary sewer with the pipe and manhole materials. And then the street condition, obviously significant cracking, potholes, and definitely becoming maintenance issues for our public works staff. So two different types of street improvements that we're talking about this evening. First would be the reconstruction areas. And when we refer to reconstruction, we're referring to the total replacement of the pavement section, along with the curb and gutter and any sidewalk that exists along the project area. In the overlay areas, there are two types of improvements that are being contemplated. One is the mill and overlay, where the top layer of the bituminous surface is removed and replaced with new. There are also some areas in that project area that are beyond mill and overlay, and they will require some additional work, and that's what we're referring to as reclaim and overlay, where essentially the bituminous is ground up with some of the gravel, compacted, and then a new bituminous surface is placed over it. In both of those types of reconstruction, or in those types of mill and overlay improvements, there will be spot curb and gutter repair that will be needed. So the curb and gutter that's bad or settled will be removed and replaced with new curb and gutter. This is a map of the existing street widths within the improvement area. Ultimately, they range from 24 feet to 40 feet in width. This map illustrates the proposed street widths, and I'll just point out a couple of those. Gorton Avenue is proposed to remain the same width as it exists today. 20th Street, that is the cul-de-sac to the north of Gorton. Currently, that is 36 feet wide. That's proposed to be 32, and that center island that currently exists is proposed to be removed. That has been discussed with property owners in the area, and all the property owners that we've spoken with are in support of that. 18th Street on the south side of Gorton, currently 24 feet. That's being proposed to go to 26. 26 is the minimum state aid width, and certainly would be improve the ability for our public works staff to maintain it with snow removal and things of the like. There's a couple others I wanted to point out. Grace Avenue area. Currently, Grace Avenue is 38 feet in width, and that's being proposed at 36. And then one that I did want to point out, the 13th Street area. On the north side of that street, it's currently 40 feet wide. On the south side, it's 32 feet wide. It's currently proposed to be 38 throughout. I did receive a call from a property owner on the south side that lives in the 32-foot section, asked that that be further evaluated as part of the design process, and that's definitely something that we will do. Then as we move on the east side of the proposed reconstruction project area, east of 9th, those streets are all 40-foot wide, but west of 9th, they're 32 feet, so they're being proposed to be consistent as a 32-foot width. This map illustrates the existing sidewalk and path locations. And this is the proposed. One thing you'll note along Gorton Avenue, it is proposed to extend that trail out to County Road 5. We've also identified sidewalk along Grace and the Rice area. We have at the open house that was held on December 12th, we did receive some comments from the property owners in that area that are not in favor of the sidewalk. The sidewalk was simply proposed to provide better pedestrian connections between existing pedestrian facilities. So we did receive that feedback, and certainly that's something that we'll review as part of the design process unless council has direct feedback as to whether or not that should be eliminated at this point. And then we are also proposing additional sidewalk to provide a connection to the park on the east side of town. The proposed improvements for sanitary sewer consist of new sewer pipes and manholes along with sewer services. It's always important to point out that the improvements include the replacement of existing services, both sewer and water, from the main and the road out to the property line. I did receive numerous calls about that since our last meeting, and I just wanted to reiterate the fact that individual service lines are proposed to be replaced from the main in the street to the property line, not to the house. Water main, also new pipe materials will be utilized, and the water services again will be replaced from the main to the property line. Storm sewer, new manholes, concrete curb and gutter, catch basins, and we'll go through that a little bit more in depth here. The Gorton Avenue project area, you'll notice that there are 3 different colors up there. The pink colored lines are the lines that we're proposing to televise during the design process. Some sanitary sewer in that area runs through a vacant field currently along the south side of the cemetery and then in some backyards. So we want to make sure that that's televised as part of the design process to determine whether or not it needs to be removed. Certainly, sanitary sewers and backyards make it much more difficult to replace, so we want to be confident that is required. The blue on that figure is newer piping, so that is not proposed to be replaced. And then the green or the rest of it or the balance of it is proposed to be replaced along that Gorton Avenue project. Water main, the entire water main system within the improvement area is proposed to be replaced. Gorton Avenue drainage improvements. One thing that we are looking at and we've discussed in the report is the improvement of the Gorton Avenue drainage in conjunction or noting the fact that a future Voss Park stormwater improvement is being contemplated. So that's being factored into this improvement area and being coordinated. I do have a couple typical sections of the streets that are being proposed along Gorton. This is what we refer to as the largest section. It's the section that's in front of West Central Steel. It's being proposed heavier to accommodate the truck traffic. I should also note that we have had conversations with West Central Steel. They are interested in the potential of bidding an alternate concrete pavement section. So we'll continue to have conversations with them during the design process and keep council informed as that moves forward. So this section consists of 6 inches of bituminous, 10 inches of gravel, and 12 inches of sand. This section is a little lighter as you move east of the West Central Steel section, and then The 18th Street section, that's the 26-foot wide street that I referred to, very low traffic volume, more of a residential street type situation. 4 inches of bituminous, 9 inches of gravel, and 12 inches of sand. And then similarly with the 20th Street. Next project area, 13th Street and Grace Avenue. Sanitary sewer improvements. All the sanitary sewer within that area is proposed to be replaced as part of the project. Similarly with the water main, all water main being proposed to be replaced. Drainage improvements along with 13th and Grace. You'll note in this figure, some storm sewer is proposed to be added to alleviate some of the flooding with the addition of additional catch basins so that some of that water can be collected off the street and conveyed away so that it prevents some of the ponding that's occurred in that area in the past. Similarly with the typical section, very similar to the ones that you've just seen, 4 inches of bituminous, 9 inches of gravel, and 12 inches of sand. And identical here with the Grace Avenue section. Rice Avenue, sanitary sewer improvements. You'll note that there's another pink line near the Kennedy Elementary School. That line we are proposing to televise also because that line is, based on the records that we've been able to acquire, is underneath some school facilities. So we want to make sure that those are being addressed if needed. The rest of the sanitary sewer within that project area is proposed for replacement. Similarly with the water main, all water main is proposed to be replaced. The drainage improvements in this area, we are aware of the previous flooding concerns at the intersection of 10th and Candy Ojai. You'll note that we are proposing the addition of some additional catch basins, storm sewer piping to help improve those flooding concerns. I will point out though to council and members of the public, this project is not going to solve the flooding concerns at that intersection. That's a much larger comprehensive solution that will be required for that, but we're certainly going to set that area up as part of the improvement to accommodate that larger overall improvement in the future. So that is being considered. I just don't want anybody to think that a new project in the area is going to alleviate all of the flooding concerns in that area. Typical section again, same as you've seen before, 4 inches, 9 inches, and 12 inches. Now we move over to the Irene, Augusta, and Mary project. Sanitary sewer is all proposed to be replaced as part of the improvement. Again, similar with the water main improvements. And then the drainage improvements. Here again, we do have some storm sewer that's being proposed to be added to improve drainage in that area. And again, the same typical section in terms of pavement section thicknesses as the previous streets. Moving on into the overlay area. Again, as I indicated, blue is proposed for mill and overlay. The yellow has been contemplated as reclaim. And then the green is maintenance area. So those are the proposed overlay areas. The typical sections for those, again, as I indicated at the beginning, two different types of projects, the mill and overlay, and then the reclaim and overlay, the mill and overlay, removing 1.5 inches of the existing surface, putting 1.5 inches back with spot curb repair and replacement, whereas the reclaim and overlay would be mixing up the existing bituminous with the gravel and putting 4 inches of new bituminous over the top of that reclaimed material. And again, concrete curb and gutter spot repair associated with that as well. Another component of the project includes the Block 22 parking lot, which is essentially a parking lot reconstruction. There's some sidewalk spot repair that needs to be completed, a hydrant that needs to be replaced, and a couple of catch basin adjustments to improve drainage in that area. Parking lot and path improvement project. This is a sunrise path and parking lot, essentially a reconstruction of that parking area. As noted previously during the design process, there have been concepts floated around in the past about expanding that parking area, and that is something that will be evaluated during the design process. 19th Avenue Path. This is the project that council recently adopted a resolution to pursue funding for, and it's been identified in this improvement report, but staff is pursuing other funding options for that improvement. Estimated project costs summarized by the project number and area. The Gorton Avenue area improvements has been estimated at approximately $6.795 million. 13th Grace and Rice at $7.155, Irene, Augusta, and Mary, $4.636. 23rd Street area improvements, which is that mill and overlay improvement area, $1.536, and then the parking lot and paths of approximately $830,000. The summary is broken down here on these slides. Ultimately, the street reconstruction portion constitutes approximately $9.5 million worth of the overall $20.9 million project cost. Storm sewer is approximately $2.6 million. Sanitary sewer, similar to storm sewer, $2.69 million. Water main, approximately $3.8, and the overlays of around $1.5 with the parking lots and paths, as indicated before, about $830,000. This slide simply breaks each project area down based on street reconstruction, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water main, split among the Municipal Utilities Commission as well as the city portion of water main, parking lots, and then mill and overlay component. Project funding sources that are anticipated include assessments, state aid participation, municipal utilities, as you saw in the previous slide with the water main component, wastewater funds, local option sales tax funds, and those are associated with the storm sewer, and it's been council's practice to only utilize those funds on the new storm sewer associated with the projects which improve drainage, not the replacement of existing storm sewer. So that's what's being contemplated here. And then, of course, city funds and potentially state funds. Funding sources. This slide simply breaks down the amount of the funding source with respect to the total project costs. Assessments have been estimated at $5.6 million, state aid participation of $1.4 million, municipal utilities $3.1, wastewater fund of $2.69, local option sales tax of just over $330,000, and then city total costs of approximately $7.8 million. The assessment component associated with the improvements, street reconstruction portion, and this is based on the adjusted front foot per the city's assessment policy, estimated at $60 to $65 per linear foot. Sanitary sewer main replacement of approximately $12 to $17 per foot. Sanitary sewer services between $775 and $825. The water main reconstruction, $17 to $22 per foot. Water services for residential, around that $1,000 mark, $975 to $1,025. Their commercial services are noted there as well, $2,700 to $3,000. Storm sewer reconstruction of approximately $10 to $15 per foot, and then the overlay somewhere between $5,700 to $6,300 per residential lot within that area. That's where you come up with the approximate $5.6 million worth of assessments. Project schedule. This, as the mayor indicated, is the public improvement hearing, and we did have an open house, as I mentioned, on December 12th. We are proposing that an additional open house be held once the design is further along to provide an opportunity for residents to come in and ask additional specific questions as it relates to their properties. Tentatively scheduled for council to approve the plans and specifications at the February 20th meeting. 2023 bid opening then would be March 29th. At the April 3rd meeting, could call for an assessment hearing, and then from there, construction could begin beginning of May, middle of May, substantially complete again in October, similar to the 2022 improvements projects, and then construction would be complete the following June, and that's simply to install the final layer of bituminous pavement within the reconstruction areas and address any seeding concerns over the winter. And so with that, Mayor and Council, I'll pause and answer any questions that you or the public might have this evening.
Okay, this is a public hearing. This is the time when the public has an opportunity to speak in regards to the consideration of the street and other improvements. And the council then will take action as to whether or not they move this forward or they table it until a future meeting or additional information is needed. This evening, we'll need 7 votes in order to move this forward. It takes 4/5. It's supermajority. So we have 7 council members present. So if there's an indication that a council member is reluctant to move this forward, I would simply request that you make that known, and so that we can table it until we have 8 council members present at the recommendation of the city attorney. So with that, I'll open up the public hearing. I'll take comment from the public, anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this issue. What I ask you to do is come forward to the podium, state your name, whether you reside within the city or outside of the city. There's a form in front of you, actually I think it's just a piece of paper. Write your name, your address, and your contact information so that if the city needs to get in touch with you, they can do so. At this time, I'll take any public comment.
Mayor and Council, my name is Brian Bollig. I have with me Sophie Bollig, my daughter, and she's going to talk a little bit about the project on Grace Avenue. We also have a petition here to give to the city administrator of 29 names that oppose the sidewalk on Grace Avenue. My name is Brian Bollig. My wife Kathy and I own a house at 1410 Grace Avenue, Southwest in Willmar, in which my parents, who are in their mid-70s to late 80s, currently live. I am also the owner and president of Bollig Engineering of Willmar. We want to state we support reconstruction of Grace Avenue and the underground utilities. However, we and most of our neighbors oppose the extra additional improvements that are being proposed to Grace Avenue. So first, we oppose the addition of the sidewalk to Grace Avenue as it would be unnecessary, burdensome for residents. Enclosed is a petition of 39 neighbors along Grace Avenue we have been in contact with the past week who are 100% opposed to the addition of a sidewalk. The proposed sidewalk will require removal of many trees, will decrease the value of our properties, and is a liability for elderly residents who live along Grace Avenue. For example, my folks currently pay $1,900 a year for snow removal for their short 20-foot wide driveway and 30-inch sidewalk leading to their front door. The addition of an unwanted sidewalk will add thousands of dollars to their annual snow removal costs in perpetuity. According to the city's comprehensive plan, Chapter 5, Section C, the city's goal to have a comprehensive and functional public transportation system that serves the entire community is supported by a policy to encourage residential street that allows for ancillary sidewalks as well as to reduce residential development costs. The addition of a sidewalk to a street that for the past 60 years has not had a sidewalk is not reducing the cost of the street design, especially at those development costs relate to residents involved in a street project. Pedestrian improvements are also not included in the publicly available trail and pedestrian plan addendum dated 2011 that is on the city's website. Adding to the question, why is a sidewalk being proposed on Grace Avenue? Second, Grace Avenue is an interior residential area of the community with mature canopy trees that represents the Mecca of Willmar's Tree City, USA designation. According to Google, Willmar is a cozy bedroom community of suburban homes and quiet streets set among the small lakes and open country 85 miles west of Minneapolis. At this time, my daughter Sophia will speak.
The Arbor Day Foundation Tree City U.S. program offers the following highlights of the values trees provide to a community. Trees help absorb the sound of traffic in urban areas by 40%. Trees reduce energy costs up to 25% by shading buildings and protecting them from winter winds. Homes with trees have higher property values. Maintaining trees assists in the absorption of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, mitigating the effects of climate change. Some have said that trees along Grace Avenue are at the end of their lifespan. It has also been said that trees are subject to illness due to the Dutch elm disease or the emerald ash borer, and that some trees may need to be removed due to these threats. The average age of an ash tree is 120 years, with some reaching 200 years. Healthy elm trees can live to 175 to 200 years. Having begun in the early 1960s, the Grace Avenue development is only 60 years old. By modest calculation, the trees in our neighborhood have only reached 50% of their lifespan. According to the city's comprehensive plan, Chapter 5, Section F, the city's goal to preserve and develop a mixture of different housings, densities, and cost range that will meet the needs of the citizens to support by a policy to encourage design standards in subdivision and higher density housing that takes into consideration the social and physiological well-being of the residents. The decision to remove healthy trees that only have reached 50% of their lifespan, and therefore changing the look and feel of the entire neighborhood, is inconsistent with this policy. Third, in our opinion, the city is doing a better job of announcing the proposed improvements. However, none of the information shared on the Grace Avenue project discussed the addition of sidewalks or cutting down most of the trees located in the row. Project information also fails to discuss the changing street widths proposed for some parts of 13th Street Southwest and Grace Avenue.
For example, engineering staff attended Grace Avenue annual block party this past summer. No sidewalks were discussed. An improvement notice was sent notifying residents of the improvement hearing tonight and the public meeting on December 12th. Again, no sidewalks were discussed. A public meeting was held December 12th. No sidewalks were discussed. Our neighbor Bill Kacken, who's here in the audience tonight, at 1314 Grace Avenue, was told no sidewalks were planned, only to verify with City Hall the next day that a sidewalk was indeed proposed in his front yard. He then asked how the city was going to install sidewalks with the 3-foot by 3-foot green transformers on the north side of Grace Avenue. And the city's response was, oh, well, we'll just have to go around them. This is one example that creates a general lack of trust amongst residents in the communication and planning for this project. A one-page summary of improvements were available to residents to pick up at the public meeting. No sidewalks were discussed. Access to the city's construction website is available to residents and provided both a list of improvements. Again, no sidewalks were discussed. We'd like to express our dismay regarding the decision to hold a public improvement hearing the week before Christmas when residents, children, and grandchildren are in various concerts and social events. This is an inconvenient time of the year to schedule such an event and adds burden to residents who want to attend. Fourth, we understand that as part of last year's 6th Street project, nearly all the mature trees in that neighborhood were removed and curb and gutter was replaced. This surprised a lot of residents as it was never mentioned in any of the publicly available announcements. If the public improvement hearing is the last opportunity that residents get to speak up in support or against proposed improvements, it seems it would be improper for residents to not be given clear communication on what is being proposed, even if that information might be contentious. Fifth, the improvements seem to be gold-plated. During my experience as assistant city engineer in Willmar, the cost per block of street reconstruction was about $70,000 to $90,000. Per the 2022 preliminary engineering report, the cost of the 23 proposed reconstruction improvements exceeds $370,000 per block, over 4 times as much. I really realize the costs for everything have gone up, but residents' income, Social Security benefits have not kept pace, and inflation is not responsible for all these cost increases. Extra, unwanted, and unnecessary improvements are being added to the projects, such as additional sidewalks and the removal of healthy trees that are not adversely affecting the curb and gutter. The city reconstructed 14th Street Southwest, which intersects Grace Avenue, several years ago. Most of the trees and curb and gutter were saved. The cost to reconstruct this street was substantially lower than the proposed street improvements, even at today's cost, as it did not include additional improvements beyond the street in utility reconstruction. Do the residents and council know there are other options that are lower cost than what is being proposed and still achieve a reconstructed street with new utilities? The city has over 80 miles of unfunded residential streets. If these streets are maintained on a 50-year reconstruction basis, 24 blocks of street will need to be reconstructed every year. At a cost of $300,000 per block, it would cost nearly $9 million, plus overlays and extra costs above state aid funds. These costs are unsustainable. Sixth, we acknowledge this is not the assessment hearing, but after construction, it is too late to discuss how proposed improvements should have been designed to reduce the overall cost and assessments. The city ought to be able to educate on what the proposed improvements are and listen to what residents want before final plans are made. Overall, we commend the city for trying to do a better job about providing public information, and the city likely has met the letter of law for this improvement hearing tonight. However, consideration should be given to whether or not the educational information provided is transparent enough. We feel strongly that the residents deserve to know if a sidewalk is proposed in their neighborhood or front yard, and if most of the trees are proposed to be cut down. Assessments are really high. We have reservations and feel that our home value would decrease if the neighborhood trees are removed. Has the city reviewed all cost-saving measures that should be considered? To summarize, we collectively, with every neighbor we contact, who signed the enclosed petition, request that the city council delete the planned sidewalk from the 2023 Grace Avenue Improvement Project. We collectively, with our neighbors who have signed the enclosed petition, request that the city council save as many trees as possible and consider street reconstruction similar to that was done for 14th Street Southwest, completed by the city several years ago, to reduce the overall project costs, reduce assessments, and to use the cost savings on other much-needed street improvements elsewhere throughout the city. As a lifelong member of this community, and with my specific expertise and background in civil engineering, I would like to offer my knowledge, experience, and time to the City of Willmar administration in the event that the council would be interested in further review of this year or future infrastructure improvement projects. Project planning for infrastructure improvements related to utilities and streets are complex, even for the engineers who design them. I've always found that extra effort to understand the impacts of design choices, as well as communication needs for all project stakeholders, can be very beneficial later in the development process for all involved. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Sophia and Brian, for your comments. We do appreciate that. Anybody else that wishes to speak?
Hello, my name is Sophia Negan. I live at 526th Street Southeast in Willmar. I'm here tonight to draw awareness for the need of a sidewalk on 23rd Street Southeast. This is a really busy road with a lot of turns. I'm concerned because kids like to walk and ride bike to Lakeland Elementary and and parks in the area. I think a sidewalk would help with the safety for kids on the road. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Sophia, for your comments. Anybody else that wishes to speak?
Good evening. My name is Josh Johnson. I live at 1459 Grace Avenue Southwest. I've lived in Willmar most of my life, and I'm a current resident at my place for 12 years now. I'm a practicing civil engineer working with Brian. I do a lot of project managing, designing of local projects, municipal and private projects within Willmar. I worked with Brian. We went and we had two different petitions that we put together. One was for the sidewalk. We weren't sure if people were going to be opposed to that or if they were going to support that. The other one I have is more to address the tree issues, which he kind of went over as well, and some of the cost implications. So the first item we had was mitigating the number of trees being removed from the right-of-way. Myself being an engineer, I do understand that trees are going to need to get removed. But to the extent that I have seen in previous projects, it doesn't need to happen that way. We understand that if they're impacting the curb, if they're impacting sidewalk or any of the utilities, they need to get removed. Right now, within just the Grace projects, there's 117 trees being proposed to get removed. Just dividing that out, that was 1.3 trees per property. Kind of breaking this out for even a cost-wise, right now in the estimate, it shows $500 just for the removal. I think that might be low. I see tree removal as an increasing cost. You'll further have in your meeting today the cost to replace those trees. It's not just that single replacement cost, it's also your city public works, it's the equipment they use. So I'm showing more than $1,000 per tree. The area that I live in is well known for the mature trees, the overarching canopy in that area. That was specifically listed when I purchased my house. Many of the additional houses that go on the market have that. As I went down the line with the petition, many of us felt that this would reduce our property values taking those out. Second item was investigating cost-saving measures. Right now, the overall project cost is $7,155,483 just for the Grace 13th Avenue, and I think it was Rice. Assessments for just that portion were $1,414,390. 20% of that is to be assessed to the residents. Just taking rough estimates of 90 different services, that's $15,715 per resident. That's not including corner lots. So some will have higher amounts, some will have lower amounts. It's getting a little high. In the last 2 years, I've managed two projects similar to this in scale and the amount of utilities. So I understand Grace is a complex. It's got water, it's got sewer, it's got sanitary or stormwater. What I typically see is about 66% of the project is utility-based, so there's not a lot of cost savings you can see in that portion. Really what you have to do is you have to look at different installation methods, and then you have to look at different materials to use. So really, you're kind of fixed with those ones. One item I did see in there is I don't understand why the city doesn't allow HDPE stormwater. Prinsco, I started out right out of college working for Prinsco. I understand a lot of the cost savings that can come with using that type of pipe. Some of the engineering is a little bit challenging for installation, that type of stuff. But Prinsco is a local business here. They have their headquarters on the campus. 33% of the costs are for the removals and reconstruction of a project. So this would include your concrete construction, so your curb and gutter, your bitumen, or your curb and gutter, your sidewalks, your concrete aprons, and then the other, so that's 33% of that. About 40 to 50% is the concrete items. The driving surfaces are about 50 to 60% of what the restoration costs are going to be. This is typically where you find your cost savings within a project. This project is not just a remove and replace project. This is a remove and replace project with additional improvements. So you're making benefits, but that's still increasing the cost of the overall project. Typically with my projects, this is where I would propose to the council and the public, there would be a select 4 to 5 different options of the reconstruction that would happen at this time. If you wanted sidewalk, if you're widening or narrowing roads, this is where that happens. Areas where I think the city could see cost savings, as Brian addressed, is the immediate removal of the sidewalk being proposed on Grace Avenue. Within that project, that is $155,000. I don't know if that includes gravel or not. That would be an improvement to the project. Edge drain and sump drainage. I don't know if gravel's included, but that's $165,000 in the project. An improvement. One item is if that was to be required, why does it need to be behind the curb and gutter? Why can't it be in front of the curb and gutter? Project looks to be completely replacing all of the curb and gutter. A lot of the communities I use, the cost savings, we try to mitigate the amount of curb and gutter replaced. We get that you have to do it when you're cutting in for your utilities. But that doesn't mean that all of it needs to get replaced. In my specific area of Grace, I walked up and down 2 blocks on my side, and it doesn't need to get replaced. Replacing driveway aprons. This is a direct result of replacing all that curb and gutter. Now those need to get replaced. Changing road risks. This is a significant improvement. 13th Avenue, they're proposing additional 6 feet of roadway. Looking out, just driving down there, you see utility boxes, everything. The sidewalk on the east side of 13th is right up against the property line, so it's going to have to expand out to the west. And if you drive right down that way, there's electrical boxes, communication boxes, everything along that way. Have the property owners been informed that they're going to lose 6 feet of their frontage? Have soil borings been done? Can we see if there's cost-saving measures for any of the aggregate that's below? Do we know what the condition is? Portions of Grace are heaving significantly, so I would almost estimate that there is very little gravel in some areas. And then, yeah, so that's where I got. And then, why are we not considering reclaim as part of this? So part of the other portions, you have a different project over on the east side of town where you're doing reclaim. So the machinery is already going to be there. Why would you not reclaim that roadway and use that for your aggregate? The city's already paid for it. I don't want to be misunderstood here. Every resident that I spoke to really wants the improvement here. But we feel that this is a little unnecessary. This petition I specifically spoke about, we asked the council to take to not take more trees than needed for the project, which we feel have a negative impact to our property. We also asked that the council take a more conservative look at the restoration cost for the project. A similar project would be the one that was done on 14th Street. I really recommend you guys go take a look at that. That's adjacent to the property. That one, they saved all the curb and gutter. When the utilities went through, they just replaced the curb and gutter that needed to get done. They maintained most of the trees. Again, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Additional comments or questions?
Mayor Kelvin and members of the Willmar City Council, my name is Dennis Schaefbauer. I live at 1436 Grace Avenue Southwest. I have lived at this location for almost 23 years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I have come to voice my opposition to the sidewalk portion of the 2023 Grace Avenue Southwest Street Improvement Project. If you were to drive through two recently completed street projects near our neighborhood, one on 6th Street Southwest and one on 14th Street Southwest, you would observe the complete absence of sidewalks. If you were to drive through two newer residential areas, one near the Copperleaf Senior Citizen Center and the other at Eagles Landing near the golf course, you would again notice the complete absence of sidewalks. In fact, if you were to drive through many neighborhoods, both old and new, in the city of Willmar, you would notice the absence of sidewalks. With this in mind, I have no idea why the designers of this project have suddenly come to the conclusion that Grace Avenue Southwest now needs to have a sidewalk along its route. The people along Grace Avenue Southwest do not share this view. This is simply an unnecessary add-on cost to an already expensive project. This sidewalk will forever change the character and the integrity of our neighborhood. The original look and the original feel of our neighborhood will be lost. There are many retirees with fixed incomes and families with modest incomes that live along Grace Avenue Southwest. They simply cannot afford the additional cost of this unnecessary sidewalk project. Please consider removing this completely unnecessary sidewalk addition to the 2023 Grace Avenue Southwest Street Improvement Project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Additional comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mark Beshan, 909 Irene Avenue, and I'm talking about the Irene Avenue project. I am in favor of this project. I'm in favor of the reduced width of the road to 32 feet and the addition of the sidewalk on the south side. So everything they've proposed, I agree with. Two comments. One would be, it would be really nice to find a way we don't have to assess residents every 50 years for $15,000, considering I drive on a whole bunch of roads other than the one in front of my house. I feel bad for those living on high traffic roads because I imagine they get assessed more. I'd be much happier to pay $100 a year for the life of my house than to have to come up with $15,000 in the next year. And that goes into the second comment, is just that it'd be nice to have a 5-year plan or something so that we would know 5 years ahead of time that we have a $15,000 bill coming. So I understand it has to be done. I've lived here all my life. I understand the process, but those two comments with regards to the street assessment. So thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions?
Council members, my name is Steve Flegel. I live at 904 Irene Avenue Southeast, and that would be the south side across the street from Mark. I am also in favor of the street improvement project. And I was very excited when I heard they were going to put in a sidewalk. We were the first house on Irene Avenue, lived there for 42 years. And but with raising the 4 children, we have grandchildren now. When you walk down to Gesh Park, I mean, the sidewalks end on 9th, and that street is about 1,200, 1,300 feet long, and you have to constantly walk past parked cars on the street. And so many times I wish that there was a sidewalk so you weren't subject, because since they put in Gesh Park, the traffic has improved tremendously. There is no other sidewalks. Olena has no sidewalk. None of the other. There are no west access during that blocked section from 9th to 12th. So people are forced to walk into or onto the street. That that sidewalk or that access, once you get across Olena Avenue, then you have access sidewalk to Lakeland Elementary, to the YMCA and everything. But I think it's critical that they have that sidewalk put in there. I know we're going to lose trees. I was there when they put the trees in, and the trees, you know, are going to come out and stuff. But I think that is probably the most important, other than the street itself, needs, it's just broken up terribly, you know, and that's the other thing is when you're walking on the street, a lot of people walk their pets. There's a lot of elderly, a lot of kids on bicycles, and you know how busted up asphalt is. You know, it's very hazardous when they fall. It's it's not a good thing. So, anyway, yeah, I just wanted to commend you for finally reach. Every year, I keep on crossing my fingers that Irene Avenue would be part of a street improvement project. The only other thing I would add to this is, and maybe some of the engineers would have an answer for it, but there is only one storm sewer drain, and that is on 12th, from 9th to 12th. So when the water comes down, it rushes past my place, goes on there. If that storm drain clogs from leaves, branches, things from, you know, the heavy rains that we get, then it pools, and it pools for all the people at the end, and sometimes 2-3 houses back from there. I don't know if an additional drain somewhere to intercept some of that water rushing down there would be helpful or not, but that would be my only suggestion on that. So thank you, council members.
Jared, can you answer that question?
Mayor, council, additional catch basins are proposed along with storm sewer in that area to
Thank you.
alleviate some of that.
Anybody else that has comments?
My name is Ryan Linger, and I currently reside at 1212 Grace Avenue Southwest. And I would just like to express my opposition to the sidewalk proposed on Grace Avenue. I actually formerly lived on 14th Street Southwest when that project was done, and I was very pleased with it. I thought they did a great job saving trees. They did replace the curbs that were bad, but left the ones that were just fine. I've lived at the residence for 5 years. Grace Avenue is not a through street. Usually the people I see walking on it are people in the neighborhood or nearby. I think there are plenty of streets around that do have sidewalks that get people to where they want to go. The inner neighborhood of Grace Avenue is not a destination, mostly just for residents. So I just wanted to make that known. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions?
Lauren Schultz, 901 Irene Avenue, Southeast. I got a water problem on 9th Street on the west side of my house. The curb is too high. Put a drive-over curb on so I can drain the water off. It's pooled in there. It has been pooling for years. Sidewalk is tipping. And when the snowplow comes up the street, if you have a drive-over curb, it won't strike that tall curb. And on Irene Avenue, if you put a tall curb in there, my water ain't going to drain off my property. I'd much rather have the drive-over curb to get rid of the water situation. It's not good. The water comes down there. I got a split level. Doesn't go in my sump pump hole. It goes in everybody's basement all the way down the block. And it used to be, before we got it tiled, the water was in the mailboxes. But we got that cured. And the street has been a problem for years. Well, all that new development, when it was done, every load of concrete, lumber, material, equipment, all come down our street and tore it all up. And nothing was ever done. The city said they were going to reseal it, never did. It's all cracked up, always has been. All the fill that come from the bypass on the east side of town went right down that street. That's why we don't have a street. We have never had a street. It's wrecked it. So it's time for somebody else to share a little bit in the expenses. Because this clearly wasn't our doing. When all that material come down my street and busted it all up. It isn't all our bill. Somebody better figure out something that means something, because it's too much for a lot of people. Thank you.
Jared, can you address that?
So Mayor, Council, in terms of the,
Address the D curb versus the drive over curb.
sure. So as part of the design process, which I want to clarify has not been completed, simply estimating items that will need to be removed as part of the project. The D curb versus the B curb, B curb is typically higher than the D curb by a couple of inches. So as part of the design process, you need to make sure that the roadway elevation is adjusted so that the water from the residential properties will run over the curb into the street. So in summary, although the proposed curb and gutter style is B curb, once the design is complete, that would not trap water on residential properties.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Additional comments or questions? I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to move it to the council table. Ms. Valiant, do we have to rule similar to on the similar to in the assessment hearing? Do we have to make a ruling on each of the objections that were made or suggestions, or can we simply just take those for information?
We'll take the comments for information for the design work. So right now, until the design work is complete, we really don't know where those assessments would land. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm just wondering if we have to comment on each one of these.
Oh.
So the objection, so basically, we have the
No.
objections of the sidewalk and trees on Grace Avenue, add sidewalks at 26th Avenue, and then support of the Irene sidewalk project.
If the council wants to tell staff how to proceed, yes, then we should have what you want as far as the council. If you want to tell the engineer to don't bother designing that right now, or if the council wants to know what the cost would be, then the engineer should continue with his design work.
Thank you. And then we do have one letter that was received and that we read into the record at this time.
Mayor and City Council of Willmar, I'm writing this letter because I have questions and concerns about the 2023 proposed project. General questions. The estimated project cost of over $20 million seems overly aggressive and overburdening to property owners and taxpayers as the newly adopted assessment policy is written. Maintenance projects were not assessed in the past and were separate operations. The contracts were funded through the Public Works budget process and were never proposed if a street was less than 20 years old. Often these contracts were funded with the annual state aid street maintenance allotment when I was involved in project development as Willmar Assistant City Engineer. We had funds available to propose annual projects that totaled $2 to $3 million. The project map that was included with the project notice letter shows a maintenance category that is not described as to what type of maintenance is proposed. The streets shown as maintenance projects are listed as overlays in the notice letter. If they are proposed as overlays, a few of the streets have been reconstructed within the 20-year useful life period. One of the proposed overlay streets still has the 10-year assessment in place. Public Works Director and city staff should be aware of this. Property-specific questions. The street at my property, 604 24th Street Southeast, was paved in 1985 and has significant cracking. See attached photos. The street condition has not changed in the last number of years, and I would suggest waiting a few more years. At that time, the pavement should be removed, the aggregate base should be reshaped, and 2 lifts of new pavement placed. This would have a better outcome for street longevity and eliminate the reflective cracking that takes place within the first years after an overlay. Sincerely, Lyndon Whitman, 604 24th Street Southeast.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Osmus.
I would just like a clarification on the Grace Avenue sidewalk. Mr. Bollig was stating that at the December 12th information meeting, that there wasn't anything proposed about the sidewalk or initial design of it. Was that something that changed in the last week or two? Or how did this come about that now we're dealing with a sidewalk?
Mayor, council, at the last council meeting where council called for the public hearing, that area was identified as an addition of sidewalk in the Grace Avenue, the east side over by Irene, the trail extension along Gorton. So that information was at the open house, and the information has been in front of council. Nothing's changed.
Okay.
So what our citizens are asking us to consider is the deletion of the sidewalk in Grace Avenue for saving the trees. That's one thing. Another thing they're asking for is to add a sidewalk to 26th Avenue Southeast, and then support of the sidewalk on Irene and the work done on Irene. So that's the comments that I had recorded. Maybe somebody else wrote down different ones, but that's what I wrote down. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just wanted for you to have the opportunity to explain why you were considering a sidewalk on Grace. I mean, I know we talked about that and making sure that we have good connections from different ones. So I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind doing that again with why that's being considered.
Yeah, so as staff was reviewing the overall improvement area, as you all know, the city does not have a comprehensive sidewalk plan. There is a trail plan that's been discussed, but as we went through the projects in 2022, some residents had strong opinions about whether or not sidewalks should be installed or not installed. So as part of this preliminary process, staff reviewed it very closely and identified that there was a gap between the west side and the east side through the Grace neighborhood. That's simply why it was proposed and ultimately being discussed, because we definitely want the residents' input. I think there's a successful public hearing regarding the improvements and also council's input relative to that sidewalk. Staff isn't advocating one way or another for it, but we identified a gap in the network and proposed it. So,
Okay, additional comments or questions? Councilman Rosk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you take us through the Grace Avenue sidewalk? Again, we'll probably have a couple questions, right? But one of the things I'm wondering is, you know, they're raising the question, members of the public, that that it's leading to the deletion of more trees. I'm assuming there's going to be trees that are going to be cut down with or without a sidewalk. Can you give us a sense of like how many trees are we losing because of the sidewalk? How many trees percentage-wise? Again, ballpark estimation for how many trees we're going to lose regardless of sidewalk or not versus if we remove the sidewalk from the process.
short answer is we do not have any topo in that area yet. So the design isn't, I mean, this is the preliminary process. So what I can tell you and support your comments, anytime that we have a reconstruction project, we run into the situation where we have trees against the sidewalks or the curb and gutter that are causing the curb and gutter to move, creating issues with the curb and the street. those trees cannot be saved. We ran into that in previous projects. We've tried to save trees in the past, and 2 years later, the curb and gutter is buckled again. So in terms of tree removal percentage, in some cases, trees can be saved. And I don't think that any staff member, whether it's engineering or public works, is in favor of cutting down trees that aren't needed to be cut down. Certainly with the addition of a sidewalk in an area that previously didn't have sidewalk, that is an impact to trees, 100%. So there are trees that need to be removed regardless of whether or not the sidewalk is installed, but the sidewalk would certainly add to the number of trees that would have to be removed to accomplish that.
Okay. Another question to the curb and gutter. Is that something that's evaluated with the new software that we've been using?
The pavement management evaluation did not include an evaluation of the concrete curb and gutter.
Okay. And lastly, had various members of the public comparing the Grace project to 14th. How do you compare those two projects? Like, what's similar, what's different?
I can't compare them right now because I was not involved with the 14th. So that is definitely on my notes to take a look at and drive tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'm just trying to evaluate what's the downside of us accepting this right now, I'm listening to the comments and the concerns with that. But from a cost standpoint, if we proceed with how it was for you to go through and do engineering, what kind of costs would we incur if we changed our mind, said later not to do the sidewalk?
The sidewalk would be incorporated into the cross sections. So in short, the sidewalk could be removed in the future if council feels strongly right now that we don't want it in there. We can certainly not do it. But in terms of overall design cost of the overall project, it's negligible.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Osmus.
And again, I don't know if we have to make that decision tonight, but right now, I would be inclined to say remove the sidewalk. It is not a major artery road, but I do understand that you don't have much then between Candy Ojai and Willmar Avenue for an east-west access. I get that. But it's not a major artery, and that it does, I would think, impact the properties and the trees and having to put it in. So in listening to the people in that area, there's not one person that wants the sidewalk there. And I'm not seeing that it's a public safety. Nobody is talking about having access for bike riders and walkers and other people using that area, that it being advantageous for public safety. So my inclination is to not include the sidewalk.
I'd like to make that as a motion.
We need that at this point.
If that's what you want to do. Staff can prepare the report. You don't have to do anything at this time. If you wanted to remove it, save the expense, which we've been told is negligible.
Right.
Or you wait until the design comes. But to me, I mean, if you got, I believe it was 29 residents that have said they wanted it removed. Why would you have staff go through the work of doing it if you're just going to remove it when you order the improvement?
Oh, then
Seems to me.
I'm just going to speak for the 29 residents then and say, make a motion to remove the sidewalk.
Second.
Also made and seconded to remove the sidewalk on Grace Avenue in the design process. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does that motion, so just for clarification, is that motion incorporating, is it a standalone motion or is it incorporating everything?
Standalone motion.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments?
Question?
Question.
Council Member O'Brien.
The definition of a sidewalk basically is transportation and safety, correct? Isn't that what it's for?
Could be defined as that, I suppose, yeah.
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 So is that the reasoning for why the engineering department decided to put sidewalks there?
Just a clarification, it was Engineering and Public Works that evaluated this entire project. And all the sidewalks, all the trails, all the street widths, everything associated with the project. We identified it as a connection from east to west, as a few council members have expressed earlier, and that's why it was included in the report. This is exactly the process that should happen with the council, that if residents are opposed to it and council agrees with them, then it can be removed. But certainly, under the due diligence of both engineering and public works staff, it was something that we felt needed to at least be brought forward and discussed as a potential for safety and pedestrian improvement.
There's no comments or questions to the motion. The motion is simply to remove the sidewalk on Grace Avenue Southwest from the design process. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have the request for adding a sidewalk design to 26th Avenue Southeast. And I don't believe you had that included. We had talked some about that at work session. But I don't believe it had been discussed any further than that.
Just for clarification, the 26th or 23rd Street? 23rd, okay.
Down wrong? Okay, 23rd?
So you are correct. That has not been included as part of the improvement, the mill and overlays or the reclaims in that area. It's certainly something that staff can look into and bring back to council. That wouldn't necessarily need to impede the process associated with what we've done tonight. But that would also likely, I would suggest that we do an open house similar to the open house that we did with the other improvements after council has had an opportunity to review that, just to obtain public input on that as well.
Councilor Rasmus.
Thank you. But we haven't budgeted for a sidewalk or what that length would be, correct? Because it was.
No, it's not in the budget, no.
Okay.
But I mean, it was talked about at our work session. It's been talked about a couple different times. Kelly Welch and the group from over in that area have brought that, I think 3 or 4 times they've come to council with that.
So I'm just curious, are we talking like all the way from Highway 12 down to Willmar Avenue?
I thought what was talked about was from the bike path, but someone with a better memory than me, maybe.
Okay.
I thought it was from the bike path over to Lakeland is what I thought it was. That Lakeland connection. Is that right, Rick?
We never really discussed that because the kids that live on the east side of 23rd Street use the walking path where Pastor Osk lives. Those kids would walk down 23rd, but you would have to go from like 8th Avenue down to Lakeland Trail. So it'd be 4, 5 blocks for safety. One thing Public Works did do is put a sign, playground, so I think that has helped a little bit. People are slowing down at the curb, but that was one thing that we were going to keep our eye on.
Right.
So.
I mean, you had a request from citizens tonight. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a disconnect from where the path comes from the school to where the path goes, the path that's being proposed to be redone, and that was looked at. I know there's utilities and how you get connected with that, but I thought the other time when we were talking about this, we were talking about a sidewalk on the north side versus, and northeast side versus the south side, and so I'm not sure. I'm supportive of looking at where that sidewalk would need to go and how you would connect to the actual trail, but there's also a disconnect with how you get from Willmar Avenue safely on the street too. There's no trail, there's no sidewalks. along there. So I'm not sure what we would be looking at as to how to solve that problem over there.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Paulman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that in overviewing these projects, I think now is an appropriate time to either make adjustments or to make deletions, but to be making additions to projects seems like could be a more substantial part of the process, because you're talking about additional design work that wasn't planned or slated, as well as budgeting that wasn't planned or slated. So it's a more difficult task. I would be supportive of that project, but it's not a part of this package of projects that's being brought at this time. So personally, I don't believe it's appropriate to vote on at this time. However, like I said, I won't be here, but I would be supportive should the project be brought in the future, and I would encourage the future council to take action in that direction. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Okay, and then the only other thing I had is that there was support of getting the Irene project done and the sidewalk done on the south side of Irene. And anything else that any council members had or staff had that I didn't record? Councilmember Nelson.
Just a clarification on the Irene one. Is there a sidewalk proposed, or was that a new? That's so
Yes.
we're good with that. Okay.
Yeah, they spoke in favor of it. Additional comments or questions? Okay, we do have a motion on the table to order the 2023 street and other improvements
No, we don't.
and approve the preparation. No, we don't have a motion.
No, we don't.
There's no
I closed the
motion,
public
Mr. Mayor.
hearing. Sorry, that's all I did. Sorry.
I would enter that motion.
Okay. Second.
Motion been made and seconded to order the 2023 street and other improvements and approve the preparation of plans and specs with the amendment that the council made of removing Grace sidewalk. Is that your motion, Councilmember Plowman?
That is my understanding, correct?
Correct.
Motion's then seconded. Councilmember Osk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, you will be working on possible revisions to the 23rd to bring to us possible sidewalks, possible ways to connect the Sunrise Path, which you're working on, to Lakeland Elementary Path.
Correct. Councilmember Ask, as staff, will put together a concept and a map so that at least council can review it and have a discussion surrounding it. So probably later January, early February for you.
Thank you.
But the understanding is that's separate from the improvement that we're doing tonight.
Correct.
Right. Additional comments or questions? Are you ready to vote? Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Ask.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Next, we have the City Engineering Department recommending approval of a resolution appointing the Commissioner of Transportation as the agent of the City of Willmar to accept its federal aid funds for eligible transportation-related projects. Mr. Vogie, our
Good e-
consulting engineer.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Enclosed in your packet is the agreement between the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the City of Willmar. And ultimately, this is a federal participation agreement, which essentially allows the City of Willmar to receive federal funds from the federal government that are funneled through the state of Minnesota. This is a revision to an agreement that's been in place. MnDOT typically revises or reviews this agreement every couple of years, and you see it before you. So staff is recommending approval of the resolution in your packets this evening.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agreement appointing the Commissioner of Transportation as the agent for the City of Willmar for federal aid funds and eligible transportation-related projects. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Aye.
Ask.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. I'm sorry, that motion passes. Next, we have the set public hearing date for the 2019 Small Cities Development Program And Jill is here with the HRA.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. The City of Willmar has been awarded $1 million in 2019 Small Cities Development Program funds. Those activities for those funds are $400,000 for the city's downtown streetscape project and $600,000 for Lakeview Apartments rehab project. The Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development requires that a public hearing be held during implementation of the activities. And we'd like to recommend to comply with this requirement that the council set January 9th at 6:30, 2023 as January 9th, 2023, 6:30 p.m. as the date for the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Jill, thank you for your work. Getting $1 million, it never comes easy, particularly when it comes from the government. As you and I both know, and all the revisions and signing of forms that we do to make this happen. So we'll have the public hearing and see what people want to do.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a consideration of an agreement with Jason Butler for land under the First Street Bridge. Mr. Walker, our Planning and Development Director.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, let me place on here. All right. Yes, so several months ago, staff was approached by Mr. Butler about leasing out land or gaining access to land under the First Street Bridge. This property is like right next to City Line Towing and under the First Street Bridge. And Mr. Butler recently purchased the property on the other side of the First Street Bridge. And so with this, I think initially the concern was about storage under the bridge, just to see, is this safe? Is this going to be a liability to the bridge? There was a lot of concern. We had conversations with MnDOT about it, and talking with MnDOT, they informed staff that they do not own the bridge and that recently that they had seen an uptick in usage of land under bridges, but that would be more so for parks and kind of activating space under the bridge, not necessarily industrial storage space. But their overall opinion was just that since it's not MnDOT's bridge and it's the city's bridge, that they were just kind of like, it's up to you to do what you want to do. So I think kind of going from there, really staff, we really weren't interested in it. And then I think visited Mr. Butler, took a tour out to the property. We kind of explained the hardships of some of the things that go on just with kind of people camping under the bridge, people leaving things under the bridge, and then him kind of being forced to clean it. And then also sometimes city staff also being forced to maintain the property under the bridge as well. And so I think from there, kind of thinking about, I think we were kind of at a place where we either paid for a bridge or paid for a fence under the bridge in this space ourselves, or it was going to be a situation where Mr. Butler was going to put up a fence, and then this would help be a catalyst to looking at improving the land down there, I guess, with eventual future development and connecting City Line Towing with the other side of the bridge for his future business ventures. I know staff had been directed to reach out to the city of Duluth to ask about industrial storage underneath bridges in Duluth. Talked to the deputy planning director for the city of Duluth. He informed me that they have a property services department for the city of Duluth that does handle leasing under the bridge, but it is different because one, the bridges are owned by MnDOT, two, the storage under the bridge is property owned by MnDOT. So with that, staff is just kind of looking for direction from council about what you guys would like to see done with the land under the First Street Bridge. Once again, this is on Benson Avenue. City Line Towing is on the west side. It's the bridge, and that's space under there right currently. That's just what's platted is, I guess, like where the pylons are. And I guess we've kind of had like discussions with staff about some of the things that we would like to see if this would happen, whether that would be certain conditions, could it be a lease, would it just be an easement, or if there needs to be engineered pylons that need to go in, or like how would 24/7 access be handled, certain situations like that. And so, like I said, staff is just kind of looking for direction for council about what you guys would like to see done with the city-owned land under the bridge. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Calvin.
Okay, so Mr. Butler did contact me. Actually, starting out, to get more background here, Mr. Butler did come to the council probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and had shared this concern and this comment with the council during the open forum portion of the meeting. He did contact myself, and I know he's contacted council members as well, and he's also contacted the mayor-elect in regards to this, and there have been conversations that have happened in regards to that. So staff is looking for some direction as to what we want to do. Staff doesn't want to continue going down an avenue if the council is not going to move it forward. But if it's something that council's interested in, certainly something that can happen. I'm going to give just a little bit of historical perspective. I started with the city in the year 2000. In the property just to the east of the First Street Bridge has been a eyesore and been a problem that the city has had and has been wanting to know how do we address this and clean this up and get this all made into a better space. I think if you take a look at the space that's on the west side where City Line Towing currently is, that was a great improvement when that project got put in there. I'm not sure if you like orange and white, but it is the triple K specs for ambulances, so it is near and dear to me, of course, the color code. So, but that was a joke, by the way, for those of you that didn't catch it. So, yeah, thanks for laughing, Gary. But anyways, so staff is just looking for some direction here. Mr. Butler feels that he needs this in order to continue his project and his buildings. But if council's against it, it simply comes to the council, and it's a council decision as to whether or not to move this forward or not. So, I don't know if there's questions or comments. Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Councilmember O'Brien
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
and Nelson.
I want to congratulate the towing service for cleaning up that area. It's not, everyone's willing to spend $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 and not come to the city and ask for help. It definitely looks better down there. My question is, what's the difference between a lease and an easement? Can you explain that, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, certainly. So Eastwood, so we'd have to work with a land surveyor to get like the easement permanently recorded, like with the property. And then I guess a lease is just more so like they'd be paying on a yearly basis. I guess we wouldn't charge them for the easement, but I guess if we could do both. So an easement would just have to be recorded, and I guess that's something that travels with the land. And then I guess like if that was ever vacated by Mr. Butler, then that's something that the city would have the authority to readdress or I think like reopen. Then I think like with the lease, it's more so on like a yearly basis. Okay, is this working out how we thought it would work out? Is this not working out how we thought it would work out? I guess like they're not mutually exclusive, so it's not an or situation.
Okay, so the easement, if they would ever sell their property, the new owner would have to come to the city and get a new easement then?
Yeah, so I guess like another part of that with the easement is that and since the land's technically the value is zero, instead of selling it, it stays ours, and I guess we could always have, like I said, we'd always have the option to retract the easement if we wanted to. We'd have to just get it like re-recorded again, but.
So would they be allowed to store any equipment under the bridge, or would they just be moving from east to west or vice versa?
So I guess like you're talking about Mr. Butler's intentions. Yeah. So talking to Mr. Butler over the past couple of weeks, the intentions is to just, instead of going on Benson Avenue for that 50, 75 feet or so, would just be using, the eventual plan is to use that space as a thoroughfare in between the properties instead of just like storage. So maybe storage currently or until like the time being when he upgrades the property, but the plan is to use that as a go in between his properties.
Because it would be safer than having a wrecker out on Benson Avenue or Highway 12.
Yeah, I imagine between that and also just like the wear on that like one spot of road.
Yeah, so, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember O'Brien, followed by Nelson.
I'm just looking at the pictures, the truss and the support beams for the bridge. Very limited places to get into the city of Willmar when our sections are blocked by trains, correct?
Yeah.
What would happen if one of those were damaged? Would that bridge be shut down?
Yeah, I'd imagine so, yeah, from a structural standpoint, but
So if an accident happened, they hit one of those support beams, right now I don't see any protection on them, they could shut down that entire bridge.
yeah, if it was bad enough, I mean, I'm not a structural engineer, I just imagine so.
Okay, that's my concern when I just look at this picture.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm feeling like we don't have enough information to make this decision tonight. And my reason for that is that what does this do to our ability, our insurance protection, if something happened to the bridge? And even if we do this and we ask them for liability, how much liability coverage, how would that work? Currently, I drove by there both sides. It's great that they're purchasing the property and improving. They've done wonderful things there. So I'm not against this, but I have a concern with where it leaves us and just the process. Have we heard from the police department? Have we heard from the fire department? Have we contacted our insurance to find out legally what happens to our insurance, to know what they need to do? And we talked about this at the council briefing. It was my understanding that MnDOT basically didn't recommend it, but wouldn't put it into writing. And so I feel like we have some mixed information here with that. And before they spend any more money, or we spend any more money, I think we need to know more information with that to make the best decision. And it's certainly your comment about driving from one side to the other is certainly different than what I heard about a place to store or the fence with that. And who's going to monitor? I'm sure they probably have cameras and things that could monitor. If it's been a concern for homeless or for a variety of things now, just behind a fence is what are we going to have? What do we see kind of thing. So for both them and for us, I think we have some more homework to do before you ask us to make a decision.
Yes, so I just kind of responded to that, or that was there.
Councilmember Osk, followed by Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to commend Mr. Butler for the concept and for the work that he's doing downtown. I think it's great. I think the pros outweigh the cons at this point that I'm looking at it. And as I'm looking at the recommended action, what we're being asked to do tonight is to authorize staff to start the process. So I'm assuming that some of the information that Councilmember Nelson is looking for is going to be coming back to us. Am I wrong about this?
No, you're correct. There still needs to be like a lot of like the due diligence of kind of like what other departments think. Like I said, like what the necessary stipulations would be for this to be favorable and viable for the city.
Okay, so you're checking in with us to make sure that it's worth everyone's time to continue, but you're going to get that information that Councilmember Nelson and the rest of us, I think, are all interested in.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Plowman, followed by Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess I would agree with both of the last two council member statements in that, well, number one, hats off to the business owners for the improvements on the properties. I think everybody's noticed it, and it's made a tremendous improvement on that side of town. And so any ideas that move that even further are even better. Also to staff for, entertaining this possibility. And it seems like it could be a win-win-win, like kind of a benefit to everybody. I hear the concerns about potential safety or liability. Since this concept came up, I started paying attention, like driving in the metro, looking underneath bridges, which is usually, there's this connotation for underneath the bridge in songs and otherwise, right? We'll stay away from that. But in the metro, for example, there's a lot of parking, and there's a lot of business parking, leased parking, and whatnot. So there's a lot of vehicles coming and going. The one thing that I noticed is that there were precast and cast in place bollards and protective devices around the main structures of the bridge, which I'm assuming if that is a good idea, if that's kind of the standard way of doing things, that would ferret itself out while staff was doing all of their due diligence research. And I'm also sure that if that were something that was recommended, or I'm fairly certain that if safety recommendations like that were put forward, I don't see that as being a huge obstacle to the actual concept, because I think it takes up a limited amount of space for safety and whatnot. But in terms of the overall concept, which is what I understand we're voting on, is the concept of moving forward with this. I'm supportive of that because I think the overall concept is good. And if we can address those safety and, possible liability concerns, it's something that could be overcome. And if there's, some concern that presents itself as being, we can't do that for this reason, or this is a huge, red flag, I'm sure that would work itself to the top as well. So I hope it doesn't happen, but I'd be in favor of this.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Just to clarify my questions, when you read this, it's written in the process of granting it. What I'm asking for is information to come back to us so we can make a decision based off on the information that you're getting, so that we're not just saying we're going to do this, let's figure out how. I think we need the information to make sure it's good for the city of Willmar. And with that, and then my second question is, with the closing of the walking bridge and with some of the other, there has been a conversation about what we might need to do. And so conceptually, how does this fit into if we needed to do something on that bridge in the future? I would hate to see them investing in something that down the road does not make sense for the city with that. And so I can support us researching it, but I can't support us in the process of granting it right now.
Additional comments or questions? Okay. I just have a couple questions. So we have the same bridge abutments that are on city land on the street. What are we going to do about that? We also have the same abutments that are in the train yard. What requirements are we going to put on them? We already know that a train has come unhooked and ran into those supports. What did we do to them? What did we do to the rail yard? I hope we're not singling out Mr. Butler, because whatever we're going to do here, we should do to all of our abutments. I mean, this is my last meeting, so it's going to be acted on after I'm gone. But what we're going to do to one, let's make sure we're consistent and do it to all of them. Because we shouldn't be putting greater restrictions. Are we going to allow trains to park underneath the railroad tracks or not? Are we going to make them disconnect and not park under the railroad tracks? Hazardous materials, your fire chief is sitting right over there. You can ask him what the threat of hazardous materials release is versus a car. I just hope we're going to be consistent. So there is motion been made and seconded, I believe. Do we have a motion yet? No. Is there any action the council wishes to take?
I'd make the motion authorizing staff to start the process of granting an easement to Jason Butler, connecting the properties located under the First Street Bridge next to 124 Benson Avenue Southwest.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor, Councilmember Nelson.
So just to clarify, I think it would be helpful for us. We got this bridge back when the bypass was done, correct? So what is our liability with the train also? As we understand this, if you're going to present this to us with what liability does he present versus what does the city's responsibility, then let's find out if there's other places there too. I can understand the mayor's comment regarding that, but I think we need to know that before. And this is city land.
Yep.
The railroad is the railroad's land, and so there is different liabilities when it comes to that. So help us to understand that, to do the right thing for the city. That's all I'm asking.
Just comments or questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have consider an agreement with Ingen for design concepts for Selvig Park expansion. Mr. Walker.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So recently, I'd say probably several months ago. I think we were just kind of talking, I think just kind of in theory about how we'd like to get some green space downtown, how it'd been a noted concern for residents of downtown that essentially the one park downtown is, for all intents and purposes, very nice, but mostly concrete, no green space at all. And it'd be nice if we could expand it into the parking lot and get some green space, kind of activate downtown, kind of activate that corridor, really make it a gathering space. So lo and behold, I think we got approached, I think, by someone at CenturyLink, just kind of about looking at putting a barbed wire fence up around like the parking lot, and then I think that kind of set off some alarm bells for different reasons. But we really tried to seek out who owned the parking lot, if we could talk to them about possible acquisition or at least expansion to make this a park, and try to put like the 7-foot tall barbed wire fence to bed. And so we finally tracked down the owners of the CenturyLink Park, and it's Lumen, and their parent company is open to either a lease expansion or selling the parking lot or the building. It just kind of depends on what happens. With it being such a massive company, for them, a transaction of $5,000 takes the same amount of time as a transaction of $50 million. So they only do transactions for $500,000, period. But for this, staff they said that like for them to consider a lease expansion, they would like to know what the city would like to do with the park, or what would do with the parking lot. And they just kind of would like to see some images. And so I know that the proposal says $16,000. That is the total, but it's really broken into two parts. And so there's a $4,000. If you look at the contract, there's a $4,000 fee for the vision study. And so what that would do is kind of get us just the visuals of like, here's what these random park concepts kind of look like. Here's what it could be. That way we kind of include that in our proposal kind of in January of here's what we just kind of want to make it a park and a focal part of our downtown. And they were very receptive to it. They were very interested in it. They said this is a common request that they get because they've built these buildings in all sorts of random downtowns, and people want to reclaim their downtowns from these brick buildings and parking lots. So it's a request they get often. And I just think like with the person who can make the decision being open to this decision, it's just something that I think we should capitalize on. And so it's right now, just kind of looking at the vision study instead of like the entire $16,000, the remaining $12,000 would be for the public engagement process, really kind of hosting meetings downtown and kind of looking and seeing what amenities people would want in the park, how they kind of want the park design. That'd be a little more in-depth, much more narrow scope. I think right now this is just a very broad overview of what the park could look like downtown, really to just kind of get it in front of Lumen as an idea of, we would like to make this a park. Are you open to this? Can we expand the lease? Do we need to buy it? We just kind of need to move this conversation forward. And I think once we get a straightforward answer from them, I think we really might be in a position to acquire this parking lot and eventually make it a park. But this is really just the very first part of trying to get the concepts in front of them. That way they understand that we're quasi-serious, would like to have a park there instead of a parking lot. So with that, turn it over to you for any questions.
Guess I'm a little confused after what you just said. So you're asking for $4,000 in money?
So I guess I think that's what's going to be spent like initially. That's just for like our meeting in January. I guess like the entire $16,000 would be the entire process of it'd be the graphics, and then secondly the $12,000 would be for the public engagement meetings and things like that. And I guess the proposal, as it's partly informational, but also just kind of letting you know. I would say mostly informational on like the $16,000, but I guess like just approval that this is what we're doing, or this is the direction that we'd like to go.
Okay. Councilor Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I understood that correctly, $4,000 is initially going to be used to kind of begin the whole process. If at that time when the information is brought forward and the council's not wanting to move forward with that, then the additional remaining funds come back not spent?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the $12,000 would, like I said, I'd come back and let you guys know how the meeting went, and then it would be, well, okay, so can we move forward with this $12,000? So it's really just kind of like in two parts, but it's just kind of that's like the contract in whole. It was really kind of broken into two parts.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you.
Okay, we don't have any action. Okay, Councilmember Nelson, followed by Fagerly, followed by Osmus.
So this is being proposed, though, to Main Street would use their funding to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're aware that there's a Selvig Park Fund that has some kind of, I think, you've reviewed that as far as
Yeah. So the
requirements or anything?
Yep. So we've looked at the original lease agreement. We've looked at the trust agreement, and so I know like a lot of hearsay is that like the city pays CenturyLink $1 or something. There's no record of it on our books. There's no record on their books. Just as far as like the trust is like a part of this. So right now this is just firmly in like the land acquisition concept part. And then once this transitions to actual like park design and park expansion, then I think we'll open that up and have a direct conversation with the Selvig Trust. And then also I think this will be turned over to the park board since they deal with parks.
Okay, thank you. I know that the Selvig family has contacted various people over the years regarding that park, and so I just wanted to make sure we're keeping everyone in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was my question too. Do you know how much money is in the Selvig Trust?
I do not. Yeah, I'd have to ask our finance director. Yeah.
And then is our Park and Rec director involved with discussions?
No. So when I've talked to him, he's more interested on like once we have it. And so, like I said, I'm kind of handling like the land acquisition side, and then once we have it, then like park design and all the like the more in-depth stuff will then, like I said, be parks director and the park board. I know. Also, we've had like some conversations, myself and public works superintendent Manzer, about kind of fixing some of the utilities underneath Selvig Park as well, since that's just kind of caused some problems for hosting events and everything downtown.
Because I know when the park was last updated, Home Depot had spent money to refurbish it, so sometimes you can get donations that way too.
Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. As far as how much space that we're looking at acquiring, is it the whole parking lot or just the north side? Is there still going to be some parking along the building?
No. Whole parking lot.
The whole parking
Whole
lot?
parking lot.
They don't need any parking?
Yeah, no. So they just transitioned out of their lease of a place that they were renting, but he was like, there's only 3 CenturyLink trucks in town, and we'll park them somewhere else.
So is anybody using that building?
He was like, if you want the building, you can have it too. Like really indifferent. Like we were surprised. We thought it would just be no, go away. And he was really like, yeah, if you want the building, if you want the parking lot, you can have it. It's just a matter of if it's $500,000 or not.
Okay.
That's my reaction. That's my reaction.
Okay. So then the next thing is, and this is like getting into the weeds here, but as far as who's going to do the possible design and vision study, do we have to open that up for bids, or how are we?
Yeah, so it wasn't just like a single contract. So we got multiple bids, and so for the design study, it was in between 4 and 6,000, and 4 was on the low end. We've gotten like some offers just for like visuals, upwards of, like I said, we had some in like the 5,000 range and some in the 6,000 range. So we asked multiple architecture firms in the state that do have landscape architects on staff.
Okay. And then I'm still confused with the dollar amounts. To me, $4,000 for the vision study, that would be somewhat comprehensive diagram of what they could do with that space. But then to have $12,000 for just the public engagement piece, that doesn't make sense to me.
I'm kind of underselling it. You'd have to, I guess, screaming black on me. But so it would be like hosting multiple public meetings, or like it'd be really in-depth park design. Okay, what are the amenities that you want? Do you want this to be a gathering space? Like, and I guess also part of this is like the nuance and the complexities of the residents of downtown and what it could be, and then also the potential of that space. Because then instead of having like downtown, kind of at the corner of like 4th, at the intersection there at like 4th and Lynch, I mean, it could be started at the park. You could start walks there. I mean, you could have a whole host of things. And so I think with the public engagement, but it's a lot of sessions, kind of like once you kind of break it out.
So is that just a lot of money then? I mean, still, that's still, to me, unless, what, do you have all of the architects then at all these meetings that we're paying them? I'm not getting how that part gets to be 12,000.
Certainly. Yeah. I understand the scrutiny there. I guess kind of the other thought process with it, I think with kind of doing so much on the front end, was, even though, I think we have like 38 parks or something in Willmar, but I think most people who, let's say we got this park and we built it, most people who visited downtown Willmar, that park would be the impression. It should be almost like a statement park. It should be a little different than the other one. So I think that's one of the things that we don't want to, if let's say we get this park and then we do it incorrectly, that'd be bad.
Yep.
That'd be bad. So I think there really should be like some thought process kind of put into, okay, what do we want this park to look like? What statement are we trying to make? What kind of space do we want this to be as really like a focal point of the downtown?
Sure. And I totally am in favor of green space and doing something with that space. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not understanding the financial breakdown. Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Some comments or questions? Councilmember Davis.
Well, I think it sounds like a great idea because I love downtown and it sounds way better than a barbed wire fence. And I think that with the hospital right there, I think it would get used a lot just by people visiting people in the hospital and stuff. So good job finding the barbed wire fence and seeing it needed a better plan.
Looking for a motion. Councilmember Nelson.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor and city administrator to enter into an agreement with Ingham Associates for design concepts for a Selvig Park expansion to be paid out of the Main Street budget.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, that is a resolution.
Roll call.
Councilmember Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next is consideration, Ms. Valiant, maybe we should talk to them if they're willing to give that building away and see if that building may be a perfect city hall site.
Maybe.
Next is consideration
Might
of
as well.
designating polling places for elections for 2023. Mr. Box, our operations director.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. 2 weeks ago, the council tabled this action item. This is a required action that the council must take every year to designate polling.
Actually, I have to get a motion to take it off the table,
You
right?
are correct, yes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take the designated polling places off the table. All in favor of the motion to take it off the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So after that meeting, immediately following that meeting, staff got together, the city administrator, the city clerk, and myself, and started to explore options of where we could realign polling locations so that every precinct was voting within their own ward. I will be honest with you, this was a tough challenge with 2 weeks in between meetings. In your packet is a solution to get every ward member voting or every resident voting within their own ward. However, it is not staff's recommendation for 2023. We have more anticipated changes ready to move that we'd like to make in 2024, which is going to be the next regular scheduled year for elections. Staff feels this may cause more confusion for residents if we're changing polling locations in back-to-back years, something we'd like to avoid. As a reminder, there are no scheduled elections for 2023. However, there are designated dates if a special election needs to happen. But again, there's two resolutions in your packet. One, the first resolution is the recommended option to keep everything the same as it was this year for 2023, and then staff would come back in 2023, operating or under council guidance to make sure every resident is voting within their own ward. That's our recommendation for this evening. However, if council would like to go the other direction and make that change for 2023, that resolution is also prepared in your packet tonight. So maybe I'll pause there, and if there's any questions, I can maybe clarify or answer any of those questions.
So staff's recommendation is that we approve the designated polling places as was prepared and presented in the budget or in the packet 2 weeks ago. Is there a pallet from the council to approve that? If so, please make a motion to do so.
I'll make a motion to keep it as is.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Plowman, followed by Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm favorable to that because staff is making the recommendation based on the premise that they have additional information and a game plan coming for the next upcoming election. So with that vital piece of information, that seems to make complete sense. So thank you, Mr. Box.
Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification on, is it just the 2 wards that are voting outside, or is that it?
Correct. That's what's in that option number 2 resolution. There would be 2 precincts that would be moving for 2023.
It's only Ward 3 though, and Ward 4 also has, I talked to staff about it afterwards, so. Okay.
Correct. Yep, it would be a polling location in Ward 3 and a polling location for Ward 4. That would be swapping to make sure that they're voting within their own wards. And again, that will be addressed in 2024.
Okay.
So the motion that's on the table is to go with the original recommendation, not the revised recommendation. Additional comments to the motion. Councilmember Osk.
Thank you. I can support the staying with the status quo this year, again, mostly because there's no election coming up in 2023. And I also can understand the hardship of trying to make this change with a very limited 2-week time that we gave you. Because of that, what kind of timeline are you thinking for bringing us a plan for 2024?
That's a great question. Typically, this resolution can be, or this particular resolution can be passed at any time. It just needs to be to the county before the end of the year. We could bring that back to you once we've made all those connections. I'll probably rely on the city clerk, Ms. Thompson, to make those connections. And I know she's already had a working plan for 2024 already in motion. So it's just following up on some of those connections, contacting new polling locations, and to see if anyone is willing to host or potentially maybe even combine and reduced voting precincts. Everything's on the table for 2024. We want to make it the most efficient, make it as efficient as possible. I don't want to short myself on a date, but if I say before the end of 2023, will that work for you? No.
Yes.
I would say at least by the fall.
Okay.
No
I'm
later
just thinking
than that.
again, like, I don't want to have the assumption that this is just something that's going to be a consent agenda item that's going to be, easily approved. Like, I think there's been issues in the past. There's been numerous conversations. My tabling of this, 2 weeks ago was again an attempt to really bring awareness to this, that I think that, and I don't think I'm alone, that I think some of us find this troublesome. And so fall would be like the latest that I'd want to see it personally.
Yeah, and that's typical. I mean, just a past practice of myself, that's when county usually sends out a reminder. The county would send out a reminder to get this resolution in. It's a newer requirement since 2018. This is a new requirement that we need to do every year now. But again, we do have a working plan in motion, and we want to bring back an efficient resolution that makes our elections even more efficient than what they already are.
I like the way that sounds. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Again, this is my last shot at this ball that's in the air right now. I think as we have continued problems finding judges, now we can take judges from any place. I mean, you can get people from Minneapolis to come out and judge in our in our elections. And,
Yes.
and I want to keep that local as much as we can. So compressing the amount of locations for voting certainly seems to make a lot of sense and something that I certainly would support, even if it went down to just 4 voting places within the city. The school district does it, and the school district is bigger than we are. They do it in 1 location.
Yeah.
And so it can be done. And I think when you get into some metropolitan areas, you'll find that probably the entire size of Willmar probably has 1 or 2 voting spots for the population, particularly the number of voters that we get, 10,000 voters on the general election. So with that, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. We've had discussion. All in favor of the motion, resolution, roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0
The
nays.
resolution passes. Thank you, Operations Director Box. Next, we'll also call on you again for authorization to complete the National Fitness Campaign Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota grant for an outdoor fitness court. And this is, Councilmember Plowman said a couple of meetings ago, if there's anything else Blue Cross Blue Shield has, and how ironic that you're bringing us something, 2 meetings after you had suggested that. So
There we go.
We've been
I guess
working-
they're listening to you, and you're leaving. I don't know.
I should have started on with that a long time ago.
Exactly, right. So, go ahead, Mr. Box.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in coordination with a statewide analysis of pedestrian infrastructure, communities, open space, public health needs assessment, the National Fitness Campaign and Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota have come together and adopted what's called a 2030 partnership master plan to build healthy communities throughout the state of Minnesota. Blue Cross and Blue Shield and the National Fitness Campaign have identified Willmar as a priority 1 site for the construction of an outdoor fitness court. This is really thanks to all the continued efforts throughout the community to expand our parks, trails, and recreational opportunities. And what this is, it's in your council packets. I don't have it on the screens here for tonight, but it is on the online in the council packets. There's an overview of really what this park would look like. This is what was presented to staff last week or a week and a half ago. We had an opportunity to go through this and just really to get to know what the program is, what the courts would look like. The single court is roughly 38 by 38 square that has 7 different stations for different fitness activities. There's also a second option to expand that to 38 by 76, which on the backside of that initial fitness court would actually be a flat, more like a yoga studio or surface like that for different open activities. This was a really interesting, a really unique idea. There's an aspect within this grant process to partner with local artists as well to create something that really identifies or embraces the culture of Willmar. And that's an option that's built within this, is to work with a local artist to make this thing look really nice. And like I said, bring out what Willmar can be. Also within that, you can see the map of the state health impact plan that the Blue Cross Blue Shield and the National Fitness Campaign have identified, listing the priority 1 sites throughout the state. And again, Willmar is one of those sites. And finally, the last page of in there has the cost breakout, and it's also included in the council action form as well. There are, for 2023, in the capital improvement plan under the Parks and Rec, there is currently $160,000 in there that could be dedicated towards this. As you'll know, my math is correct on this, and it does not cover the entire cost of the project. However, there is an opportunity for the city to work with other area local partners for in-kind work, donations, things in that nature to work towards and making this a doable project. So I'll pause there. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you have any questions, Administrator Valiant can also field those as well. So this is again, a request to apply for the grant, which would be upwards of $50,000 towards this project.
Councilmember Davis.
Do we have any ideas where this would go?
Yes, yep, we have a few sites that would be selected. One of the criteria, high-scoring criteria for this grant, it needs to be visible. It needs to be visible from the road. We've identified, and I'll have to rely on maybe the mayor or city administrator to identify the park that we had talked about during one of our meetings, right where the pickleball courts were just constructed, or the new parking lot outdoor pickleball courts are across from Robbins Island, was identified as one of the potential sites that this could go. We haven't finalized that decision yet. Of course, we want to weigh all of our options and make sure we're making the right choice on where this fitness court could go. But it's an important part of the grant application, visibility, connection, pedestrian connections as well.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, lest we forget that Blue Cross Blue Shield as an organization takes part in these endeavors for, public perception as well as outreach, as well as, messaging and branding and all those different things. But with that said, it's still, I think, a phenomenal thing for the community. Especially when you look across the map at all the locations across the state that they've done this. The fact that Willmar is one of the very few top tier, like tier number one as chosen locations, bodes well for our community. I know they have, in fact, I know where the specific site location is in St. Cloud where they have theirs. And I know the process they went through, and even, it's technically Waite Park, but they went through quite a lengthy process to try earn this and get the okay for this. So they worked really long and hard to try to get this. So the fact that we're in contention for this, I think is a good thing. I think site selection's everything. As Waite Park iterated when they had theirs, but I also think it's fantastic to form and forge these relationships that have some good standing and solidify the relationship moving forward, because it leads to even more opportunities for growth and development, and keeps us on their radar. And so I appreciate the time and the effort that staff has put into doing this, and I support it moving forward into the future.
Additional comments or questions, or is someone ready to make a motion?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to pursue. Help me out here, Kyle.
Be to authorize the staff to complete the grant.
Additional comments or questions?
Yeah.
Councilmember Osmus.
And I don't know what locations you've all looked at or are already considering, but I would throw in my hat for Miller Park and that green space where we took out the tennis courts. Very centrally located. I'm just trying to, centrally located, visible, more likely for people to come in that area. Somebody's working out while the kids are splashing. Or something out by the DOAC. Because I just think we have another lot of green space out there that could access off of the bike paths right in that playground area. But
You think of that spot north of the pond?
15th Avenue, possibly where that park area is.
To the north, or
yeah.
not the DOAC, but the north side of?
Well, yeah, north part of DOAC, towards, yeah.
Okay.
But in
I
that
know
area.
a key piece, and Kyle, I think I heard you say this correctly, is visibility. I mean, that's a huge deal to them, and I know in the scoring piece that was going to be really huge. So, because there were some other sites that we had suggested.
Yes.
And they pretty much told us right away that they wouldn't work.
Yep, it would alter or it would affect the scoring of the overall grant. And the reason, I mean, even Robbins Island was thrown out there as an example. There might not be a good placement for it because it's going to have to be too far off the road, and they wanted us closer to the road, visibility. That's really what was stressed to us. Yep.
Question.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you. Well, I look at this and this is a great idea, but what really jumps out at me is this going to be staffed all the time it's opened?
Not staffed at all.
Not staffed.
How are you going to ensure this? I mean,
Like
you've
of
got
our other
all this
parks.
stuff going on.
Yep.
Who's going to be responsible?
I guess I would look at it similar to how we insure the rest of our parks. It would fall.
But
more
they
likely fall
have
within the-
gates, they have fences, they have bowers. So this is going to be wide open?
Yes.
Our parks aren't gated. Mike,
Hmm?
Mr. Councilman, our parks aren't gated. Miller Rice Park is not gated. That's all wide open.
What happens there? Does that open up year round?
It's open, it's always open, yep. And in our insurances, we have what's called out in the open, public property in the open.
I just look at the exercises and stuff going on here and I'm going,
Yeah.
oh boy, I can see a lot
No.
of things that could possibly happen.
It's just like any other place that has playground equipment. Playground equipment is also out in the open, and this would be considered the same as any playground structure.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made and seconded. I would like to just throw one thing out for the council to consider. Willmar is blessed with a wonderful arts community. And one of the things where I think we really sell ourselves short as a community is that not putting enough emphasis on our artists in compensating them adequately for the work they do. I mean, a lot of times we're asking these artists to do things pro bono. We're asking them to do them with minimal compensation for the size and the scope of the project, that type of thing. So as this progresses, and if we make it to the next step, I would really strongly recommend that the council really look at compensating your artists for the work that they're doing and the time that they're doing. If you take a look at the mural here, I'm not saying the word right, I understand that. That's here, one we had at Gary Anderson, the one we had at the community center. Those were done, the one at the community center, someone can help me, maybe that remembers numbers better than I do, but I think we paid Ron Adams about $2,000 to do that mural. So I want to make sure that we adequately, or that you guys consider adequately compensating the artist, if you're going that direction, to just really make sure that artist is compensated for their time and materials. And not only that, but also the expertise that they're going to bring to the table, because if we do this right, people will travel to Willmar just for this piece, and just to see how it's put together. The proposal that's in front of you includes that exercise area, the yoga area, the area for activities that can be held there as well, which would then even accent it even more. So I just ask council to consider that, future council consider that as this moves forward, if it moves forward, if we're even selected. So motion been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion does carry. Next, we have a resolution to setting the 2023 fee schedule. Mr. Box again.
Thank you,
You're
Mr.
on a
Mayor.
roll, don't stop.
All right. Attached is the proposed 2023 fee schedule for next year. You'll notice some redlining in there, mainly the addition of adding the Planning and Development Department out of ordinance and into it, which it still remains, but also adding it into our fee schedule so it's more easily searchable and can be found without having to dig through the zoning ordinance. There are some other minor changes in the Parks Department, including just a slight increase on rentals. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Want a motion first?
That'd be nice. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to accept the fee schedule.
Second.
Made and seconded, Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Just a clarification, under administrative fees, under labor, it's confusing to me that we would set it by employee wage and benefit rates.
Sorry, I got to clear.
So I'm just curious what that means.
Sure, so I'm taking it as if staff have to do, we'll take, so this is in, for example, for the FEMA project, or for a FEMA disaster that we had this May. Staff had to go out and do work to clean up the debris, remove trees, debris from the road, haul it to our dump site. When we submitted our FEMA claim, we then need to go through, calculate our wages, salaries, wages and benefits, fringe benefits, put that as a total package together and submit that dollar to FEMA for total reimbursement. Having it in our fee schedule just kind of helps solidify that, our rates, what FEMA is going to accept. Now, there wasn't a lot of pushback when we submitted our claim. It was a smaller claim, but in the event that a larger disaster could happen to the city of Willmar, we want to make sure that our fee schedule includes that type of language, so that if FEMA asks if that is included in our fee schedule, we can point to it and say yes. That's just one example, but that would be probably the most relevant.
I was just curious if you got to select someone based off from salary. So that's what that was my concern with.
It would be any employee, and if it was myself, we would break it out, since I'm a non-exempt employee or exempt employee, we'd break it out by the hour if that's what we needed to do.
Okay.
So as an example, when we sent the firefighters down to Louisiana, we had pay for chiefs, captains, lieutenants, firefighters, our equipment, all of that was all broken down, and they all have to be broken down separately.
It's a lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork. And none of that can be done unless you have.
Okay.
If you don't have it, then you got to go and council has to adopt a charge.
Yeah.
Hey,
Comments.
yeah, well, I have another question. If I
Yep,
can.
go ahead.
I know when we were out at the event center open house, there was a statement made that not-for-profits could use them at different rate or free, if I remember correctly. And I'm just curious how that is incorporated. I see under like the Showmobile, there's a different rate, but what about the different locations or the auditorium or some of those? How does that fit into that statement that was made? Because I know they did that at the community center also.
If that language is not in the fee schedule, and I don't know if that's in past or in current policy or procedure for staff, I'd have to review that. But if that is a line that you'd like added in here,
I don't know.
we can do that.
I'm just aware that has been a practice at locations, and so I was curious because there's some pretty substantial increases, and so
Sure.
people that are using the facility that aren't paying that right now, how will that work for them?
Mhm.
So I'm just curious about that, if anybody here can answer that.
I can let you know.
I'm assuming you want this approved tonight, or does it need to be done?
We can revise it
We
in
can
the
always-
future. We can revise it
Okay.
also. It does not have, does not have to wait for another year for any changes or amendments to it too, so
Okay.
we can check with recreational director and discuss that.
One more, sorry.
Go ahead.
The planning and zoning that's in there, were there increases in that?
The only increase, thank you, Councilmember Nelson, I did omit that by mistake. The inspection, so about halfway down, on the last page of the red line, the current rate on there was $42 an hour. That was supposed to include staff time, supervisory time, overtime, all of those charges, and we did not feel that adequately covered all of those fees. So those fees were raised to $140 an hour to include all of those. Other than that, there are no other changes in the planning and development section.
Thank you.
So comments or questions? So are you requesting us to, are you comfortable to vote on it now, knowing that it's gonna come back, or do you wanna table it and have staff do the work, or what do you wanna do?
I believe I heard the administrator say that we would get additional information and that we could change it in the future, so I wasn't looking to table it.
Okay, additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have community pride announcements, but before we do that, I have a plaque that I'd like to present to Councilmember Plowman for his years as council member. So Andrew Plowman was a city council member, Ward 1, in recognition of dedicated service to the city of Willmar, January 2015 through December 2022. Wow. I got a little thing I'd like to read for you as well. Andrew Plowman was elected to serve as council member for Ward 1 from January 2015 through December 2022. During his time on the Willmar City Council, Councilmember Plowman served on several commissions and committees, including the Airport Commission, Rice Hospital Board as an alternate, Fire Code Appeals Board, Intergovernmental Planning and Communication Committee as an alternate, Invest in Willmar Recreation Field Subcommittee. He also served on the EDC. Councilmember Plowman always made himself available to the citizens and businesses. Thank you, Councilmember Plowman, for your service to your community. Also, those of you that are friends with Andrew on Facebook, he put a very nice post on Facebook about 5 o'clock this evening. Very well read, very well stated. And I would just commend you for the work that you've done. It hasn't been easy. You've had a lot of trials and tribulations through the time, and you've served well, and the citizens of Willmar will really miss your leadership, your vision, and your tenacity of asking the tough questions, making the tough comments, and standing your ground on what you felt was right. Lower taxes was always something that was important to you, and you held true to that even to your last meeting. So thank you very much for all your service. We really do appreciate that. So let's give Andrew another round of applause.
I suppose I need to follow that up with trying to jumble words together.
Sure, that'd be good.
Well, first of all, I was not expecting this, so it's very humbling, like super humbling. It's bittersweet for me because this is I'm passionate about this stuff. It's kind of strange to some people because they go, "How on earth would you be passionate about such a thing?" But the process is important to me. Like many years ago, I was involved in state politics and even national politics, and I found myself becoming kind of increasingly frustrated and upset by the way that politics were going. I mean, look around our world, right? It seems at times like it's chaos. But instead of getting upset about it, I decided the one thing that I could do was get involved, do something. And so I made the decision to take it upon myself. You know, if I can't, make this huge difference in the nation or across the state or whatever, the one thing that I could do was I could sign up and run for election for city council, and I could be a part of the discussions that would hopefully ultimately lead to a better community, a better place to live, work, and raise our kids. And that's my sole reason for being here. And that's been the driving component behind the conversations and the meetings and the phone calls and the emails and all of the other stuff that goes along with it. So I'm incredibly grateful for every single discussion that's happened, for all of the voters that trusted and that were willing to vote for me and put me in this position. All council members, whether we agreed or disagreed on whatever subject, I'm grateful to each and every person, past and present, that's been at the table here. Our incredible staff. I think our city has some incredibly talented people, and I think that we've done a great job at doing a pivot at trying to highlight that and trying to put focus on that and really lift those people up and really give them the recognition that they deserve, because that will go incredibly far, incredible distances at elevating them and encouraging them to do even bigger and better things for the community. And I hope and I'm confident that that is the case moving forward. And I guess finally, I'm most thankful for the optimists. It's so easy this day and age to look at all the negative stuff and to be negative, to be driven by the things that get us down, the things that anger us, the things that set us back, the day-to-day frustrations with life. But there are people, a lot of people, that aren't pessimists. Rather, they're optimists. They look for the good in things, and they look for the good in people, and they try their best every day to give it their best and to go about life with a positive vision and a positive view, and to just trust that things are going to be okay. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and we're going to go through some bumps and twists and turns to get there, but ultimately things can be okay. But the main way that we make things okay is by working together, finding the thread that binds us all. And I think that's super important, and I appreciate those that are willing to continue fighting for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate that. Next, we have community pride announcements.
Mr. Mayor, I'm honored to give you something. Where has the time gone? It seems like just yesterday that you were saying goodbye to you as our first full-time fire marshal and fire chief. Now, 8 years later, we are saying goodbye to you as our mayor. You decided to run for mayor when the city was at a crossroad looking for true leadership. With your vision, wisdom, and knowledge of city business, we, the city of Willmar, had a leader for 8 years that has put us in a better situation to continue to be the regional center in west central Minnesota for years to come. From the citizens of Willmar, the city staff, and the Willmar City Council, we want to thank you for a job well done with your passion and dedicated service to our great community. We're going to miss your jokes, your hearty laugh, and fishing stories. We wish you and your wife Jenna and family the best. Hopefully you will continue to reside in the Willmar area. You can stop in at City Hall and or to a council meeting at any time. You will always be welcome. Once again, thank you, Mayor Kelvin, for your time, passion, and dedicated service to Willmar. God bless.
Thank you. Congratulations. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, I'm not going to talk quite as long as Andrew did, but to the citizens of Willmar who elected me, thank you. When I walked into this job, I didn't really realize what I was getting into. As Councilmember Plowman stated earlier, there's been bumps, there's been bruises, but at the end, we're stronger. And we're stronger because we're a resilient community. We're a community that embraces change and a community that embraces its diversity. And the citizens of Willmar, you are to be commended for the work that you do, because the work that you do around diversity, inclusiveness, and acceptance of people is what makes this job a fun job as the mayor. I was able to sit at this chair and I look at the tremendous growth that has happened in Willmar. I remember when I was elected, the first meeting I had with the then serving city administrator, and I was told, you need to make sure we get this Y project done. And no one realized what a $50 million project, a partnership between public, private, and industry would happen. Just this last week, we heard that Burlington Northern Santa Fe has contacted us, the city of Willmar, to only be the second rail hub supported by Burlington Northern Santa Fe in the state of Minnesota. This is a big deal, folks. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce. Ken Warner the work that you have done to make this community the strong community it is, the endless conversations you and I have had, both good, both bad, both passionate, and the support that the chamber has offered to me and the business community has offered to me is just unbelievable. City staff, Leslie, better not look at you. We are in a position today. We went through a lot of city administrators, and as sitting in the mayor's chair, when you lose an administrator, it is really tough, and I know what tough is. But we are fortunate enough to have Leslie Valiant as our city administrator, a lady with vision, determination, tenacity, integrity, compassion, the ability to get the job done, the ability to pull a team together and get the team pulling, all the horses pulling in the same direction. The staff that you have hired, the staff that you have put in place, really, Leslie, you are doing a phenomenal job leading the city of Willmar. We could not be more blessed than to have you at the helm. You are an awesome lady. We are very, very fortunate. To the rest of the city staff, they're not always going to be easy days. I worked for the city for 13 years. Negotiations are always tough. But at the end of the day, we all have the same best interest in mind. We all want to serve the public. We all want to do the best we can, and we want to do it in the most cost-effective, efficient way that we can do so. To you all sitting here, current council members, past council members, I have a way of being a little bit tough. But I've been a little bit tough just because I want us to be the best we can be. If I've offended any of you, from the bottom of my heart, I apologize. I really do. I really apologize for any hard feelings I may have caused between us. For any disagreements that we've had, I apologize for that. I take ownership of that. But I will tell you that it will not hold me hostage. I am free of that. I have freedom from that. I request your humble forgiveness for anything that I may have done that has harmed you and has held you back. I apologize from the bottom of my heart, most sincerely that I can. If I've made you feel uncomfortable, I apologize. I'm sorry. To the future of Willmar, we are a rocket ship ready to launch. Willmar's in an excellent position. The leadership that Mayor-elect Reese will bring to this chair will take Willmar to the next direction and launch us into the future. The launch pad is loaded, the rockets are loaded, and we're ready to blast off. Evidenced by tonight of Blue Cross Blue Shield wanting to continue to invest in our community. Of the other projects that we have happening, the street improvement plans that are in place and how we're going to make our community even better and stronger because of that. We're in a good place, people. We really are. And I'm proud to have served. I'm humbled to have served. But I also want to thank my family for the sacrifices that they have made as well. So with that, I guess I maybe talked longer than you did, but
It was good. It was good.
But I apologize for that, and thank you all for everything that you've done. It's been appreciated. It was not expected. Anybody have any other Pride announcements? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
For the last time as the mayor of City of Willmar, we are adjourned from this meeting.